Hello students, I hope you are all fine and in good health. In this particular audio presentation, I will just discuss in a nutshell the chapter Landscape of the Soul. I will just discuss few of the important points related with the chapter Landscape of the Soul. Actually, this chapter or this extract highlights the basics of art. Chinese art on one hand, European art on the other hand. These present a study in contrast. So when we actually go through this chapter, we will find a contrast between the Chinese art on one hand and the European art on the other hand. The Chinese paintings are not as realistic and perfect as European paintings. Now, if we closely consider and critically consider, we will get to know that the Chinese painting they are not as realistic in comparison to the European painting. A classical Chinese landscape does not produce the actual view. Now, if we inspect or if we visualize a classical Chinese landscape, it won't provide us the actual view. It can be entered from any point. That there lies the difference between the Chinese painting and a European painting. Unlike the European painting, the Chinese painting can be entered through any point, can be seen from any point, can be appreciated from any angle. The viewer is free to travel up and down. That is the reason when you are eager to appreciate a Chinese painting, it is an exercise not of the mental, but also it is a physical one. It is an exercise of the mental as well as the physical senses. So this is it. What has been written here? The viewer is free to travel up and down. He has to participate in it both physically and mentally. Active participation in of a viewer is required both from the physical point of view as well as from the mental point of view if you want to appreciate the Chinese painting. So I repeat this line, dear students, once again. He has to participate in it both physically and mentally. The scenery is an inner one. An emperor could rule over his big conquered territory, but only an artist could enter it. We can find in Wu Daozi's case also. Wang Zhong might be the emperor who can rule over a big territory that he had conquered. But when it comes to creative art, it is only the artist. And we can find in case of Wu Daozi that famous landscape painting where he entered inside the painting and along with the painting he disappeared. So it is only the artist who has the keys to unlock the secrets of his own artistic talents and experience and various sort of artistic experiences. So it is only the artist who has the keys to actually delve deeper into the realms of creative excellence. So he knows the way to enter it, and only he could enter it. In European art, on the other hand, the viewer has to borrow the eye of the painter to look at a landscape. That means you have to follow the guidelines of the painter, but not in a Chinese painting. In a Chinese painting, you can appreciate and you can visualize the painting from any point of view, from any angle. But in a European painting, you have to follow the advice of the painter. You have to borrow his eyes. That is the main thing. The scene creates an illusion of likeness with reality, that illusionistic likeness, and that we have read about Quentin Messias. Remember that illusionistic likeness, the way he had painted the fly on the drawing panel, that is very important. And that is also there lies the concept of delicate realism also. That part also is very much clear by now, I guess. So let me continue. The scene creates an illusion of likeness with reality. This idea has been illustrated through stories. Various stories are there. The 15th century story of the blacksmith turned into a famous painter, Quentin Messias, is a perfect example of that we have went through. So this particular discussion is just an overview of what we have learned related with this lesson landscape of the soul. So dear students, I am moving on to the third segment now, third paragraph rather. The lesson also explains the word landscape and the concept of sanshui. Very important. Landscape as well as the concept of San Shui also had been explained. It is the Taoist view. Remember, this Taoist view came from Wu Daozi. Land stands for vertical and masculine mountain. Scape represents water that flows horizontally and is feminine in character. Land is actually masculine, it is vertical. Scape, it is horizontal and it is feminine in character. They have to interact, although they are like two poles of the universe. Both the land and the scape, they have to interact. That is the yin and the yang, they have to interact. Though they are two various poles, they are two opposite poles of the universe. The man who acts as their connector is the eye of the landscape, the middle void region, the main connector. The cord of communication is obviously the human beings. Now, that is the introduction, or rather to say a short overview of the chapter. Now, let me explain a bit about the chapter in short summary so that you can remember some important things to remember points. So, see, actually, this chapter is divided into two parts, each telling us about art, not only art, but also its history through various stories and the history behind artistic creation. So one thing is very important, dear students, not only this chapter tells us about art, but also it makes us well aware of the history behind greatest artistic creation that shaped and reshaped the world again and again. In the part taken from Landscape of the Soul, Ethics and Spirituality in Chinese Painting, we learn about the art of painting through two stories. The first one is obviously given in the first paragraph, in the very first page. The first one is about a very popular Chinese painter, that is 8th century painter by the name of Wu Duozi. It is about the 8th century, as I told you right now, when he was actually commissioned, or rather to say he was hired by the Tang Emperor Wangzong to adorn. Adorn actually means to beautify, to decorate. That is the meaning of the term adorn, a wall of the palace. Wu painted beautiful scenery with mountains, waterfalls, forest, as well as clouds and blue skies, with people living harmoniously in a happy environment. All these things, all, or rather to say, all these images are projected in that beautiful artistic painting, landscape painting, to say, to be very precise, that Wu had painted on the palace wall of Wangzong, and Wangzong can also identify those things. So I repeat once again, Wu painted beautiful scenery with mountains, waterfalls, forest, as well as clouds and blue skies, with people living harmoniously in a happy environment. However, he painted a cave also. Apart from that, he painted a mysterious cave also at the bottom or at the foot of the mountain that was inhabited by a spirit, as he also explained it to the emperor regarding this. When the painter was showing his work to the emperor, he claps his hands and an entrance to the cave opens when he gets in and vanishes. Finally, he claps his hands, an entrance to the cave opens and he gets inside it and it vanishes. That is, the painting vanishes, along with the painter Wu Daozi also vanishes. And the surprising part is that the myth is that Wu Daozi was never seen again. Thus, after disappearing, the author says that that denotes the knowledge of the mystical inner world, because Wu Daozi, not only he was an artistic genius, but he has already experienced the inner spirit or the inner essence of the beauty of work and art. Thus, it says that only the masters are aware of the way within and go yonder any material form. So, it is clear that only masters, painters like Wu Daozi, they were aware of the essence of the spiritual beauty and they can enter it. They have the keys to enter it. Similarly, there is another story about another popular Chinese painter who did not draw the eye of a dragon, though he had drawn the entire dragon, as you know, but he was reluctant to draw the eye of a dragon. Why? Because it would become real and it might fly out of his painting. Next, we have a third one about a master blacksmith that is in the 15th century Antwerp. And the name of that master blacksmith, it was Quentin Messiers, who falls in love with the daughter of a painter. But he was a blacksmith by profession. As the father was not accepting of his son-in-law belonging to such a low profession, he still did so. What he did? He accepted Quentin because he painted a fly on his board. There lies the concept that I already referred earlier, delicate realism and illusionistic likeness. And he painted the fly in such a way it seems absolutely real. And that is the reason when the girl's father finally entered his art in his painting room, and when he found the fly painted on the canvas, he at first thought that it was a real one and decided to swat it away, but later he realized that it was a work of art. He recognized the talent or the genius of Quentin Messiers and decided to take him as an apprentice, as you know by this time. And later, the same blacksmith by the name of Quentin Messiers became one of the greatest painters of the 15th century in Europe. So I just continue with this. As the father was not accepting of his son-in-law belonging to such a profession, he still did so. He accepted Quentin because he painted a fly on his board. It had such gentle realism that it resembled a real one. That is the reason I told you that the girl's father, who himself was a painter, he thought that it was a real one and he decided to drive it away. But later he realized it is not a real one. Further, the author also talks about Chinese philosophy. Shan Shui, actually mountain water, yin and yang, middle void. We get to know about all this. Secondly, the one that I discussed today, that is the second part, is actually a newspaper article written by Brinda Suri that was published in the Hindustan Times, and the title was Getting Inside Outsider Art by Brinda Suri. Talks about the concept of art brute, those who doesn't received any sort of formal art training, but they are extremely talented to project their artistic beauty and creativity. And Nick Chand can be said to be one of the precursor or one of the person who actually originated it in our country and became extremely popular later all over the world. Art brute translates to the art of the ones who have no right to be artists. Why they have no right to be artists? Because they are not formally trained in art and sculpture, but they have the innate talent or inner talent to execute their artistic creativity in such a gigantic manner, in such a magnum opus manner, that it becomes knowledgeable not only the place where he's staying, but it becomes famous throughout the world. And Nick Chand is actually a person, 80-year-old person, who is very famous for this. He collected many raw materials and developed the rock garden that is very famous in Chandigarh. It is because they lack any formal training, yet somehow possess artistic talent and insight. Insight actually means, we can say, not only artistic talent, but insight means they have a proper sense, or rather to say they have an artistic sense in them, though practically speaking they don't have any formal training. She refers to them as the one, she means Brinda Suri, she actually refers to them as the one who think outside the box and defy the normal standards. Now, these artists who doesn't have any formal training, but still they are creatively very strong. They used to think outside the box, and they defy means they disobey the normal rules, standards, norms, as we can say. People refer to their work as unorthodox, something extraordinary also, something that is not normal in the sense, or rather to say something that is outside the box, something that is quite different, not on the similar lines, but despite that are very much beautiful and of full artistic talent, but unorthodox, not orthodox. She cites the examples of Nick Chand's work at Rock Garden in Chandigarh is a form of art brute. And obviously, 80-year-old painter Nick Chand, or sculpture rather, sculpture and painter, his work was taken into due consideration, and his famous sculpture, art and sculpture work at the Rock Garden in Chandigarh, it is an example of art brute, unconventional, unorthodox, yet full of artistic beauty and artistic talent. But remember, sculptors and painters like Nick Chand, they are not formally educated or formally trained regarding the nuances of art and sculpture, but they have that innate creative talent, and that is that has been exposed, and it has been given the due recognition by the painters and artists all over the world. And it seems that Nick Chand was actually the proponent, or rather to say, he was the precursor of that art brute form in India, because his rock garden in Chandigarh is a perfect example of that. So finally, in conclusion, we can say that Landscape with the Soul, we learn that art is an infinite form which has a rich history. Yes, art is an infinite form, it has a very rich history, and it cannot fit inside any certain box or level. It has a life of its own. Yes, it cannot be fit in a certain box or level. You can't actually stereotype it. Art cannot be fit in a certain portion, in a box or a level. It has its own dimensions, it has its infinite dimension, and it has a life and an identity, or rather to say, art has an existence of its own. So dear students, that is the chapter overview and a short summary. If you go through this, you will remember many of the important concepts regarding this particular chapter, and I hope you will listen to this audio presentation. Dear students, if there is still any sort of confusion in your mind, don't hesitate, do ask me. I will clarify those concepts to the best of my ability. Thank you, students. Thank you all.